Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 22-year-old competitive bowler from Canada, currently living near Toronto. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record most of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. So here we are today at Joe's for our bowler session. I think I mentioned at the end of the last episode that I was going to go do a session at Up the Block, but they didn't open till I think noon or something, a little bit later than when I like to start my morning session. Just because my days are really long and I like to get started pretty soon. I don't mention this all the time, but I usually try to start my first session around between like 10 and 10:30, 11. Usually the closer to 10, the better it is for me usually. And what's nice as well is that my family owns Climbers Rock, so I can usually just go do my first session there a lot of the time and go before hours if need be. And then I usually start my second session around 3 to 4. That's kind of how it goes. First session, 10 a.m., second session, 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Yeah, we are here for our boulder session at Joe's. And if you remember from our previous sessions at Joe's, they have their comp wall here, which we're climbing on right now. And they have 3 comp style circuits, the hardest circuit being pink tape. You'll see we're hopping on a couple pink tapes here. So they have 4 pink tape boulders on their comp wall. And like I mentioned in the previous episode as well, usually with the pink tapes, there's often one like really standout hard boulder, which you're now seeing on the screen right here. Oh God, we'll talk about this boulder. We're going to be with this boulder for a while because it took me a while to do. But yeah, so we have like one standalone really hard boulder, and then usually the other pinks are a bit softer. And so I started with a couple of the easier looking pinks that at least that's what I thought, and it proved to be a bit of the case. So I did a couple of pinks to finish up the warm up, and then I knew that this one looked like it was going to be a lot of work to do. And then after, there's like one more pink tape that we'll do as well. But yeah, this boulder was, honestly, thank goodness for this boulder as well. You'll notice it's not that intense on the grip strength. Like there's no crimps. Thank goodness. You know, we got some nice slopey holds, especially this beginning sequence is like, you don't need it doesn't take anything, any grip power to really be exerted really powerfully at this beginning sequence. And the reason that this is so good is because yesterday's day of training, oh, man, you keep hearing me say this, like it was probably getting annoying at this point, but this training phase is kicking my butt. My hands are just in a constant state of burning. Like the only bit of relief I find I'm having with my hands like not hurting is when I wake up on the morning of day 1, because when I wake up on my rest day, my hands are usually like dead from the day before, and so I need like that full rest day plus another night of sleep to get to the day 1 morning. That's usually when my hands are fine. And so I like have a bit of power for like the first little bit of day 1, session 1. But yesterday especially was like crazy. The kilter board session was so good. We tried really hard on all the kilter climbs, and like I like zapped all my energy. And then we did a campus session where I was already dead, but I decided I wanted to try my absolute hardest. And, you know, like I was saying, optimize all those little micro percentages of like just trying hard and making little itty bits of progress on all the boulders. And obviously this just zapped the tank. So the reason I wanted to go to Up the Block today is because it had a lot of slab, and I was probably just going to try and climb on slabs and make up slabs for the whole time. But they weren't open, so I had to pivot to Joe's, and I was just hoping that there would be like a few boulders that weren't going to be too intense, and that I could like work for a while. And I was going into the session being like, okay, I might have to call this session short because it's just getting ridiculous at this point. I'm so tired. And like I mentioned in the previous episode as well, is I don't want to call a session short. I'm like trying to prolong it as long as possible, because my goal for this training cycle is to execute it perfectly and not have to switch any of the training around or cut any sessions short, because it's just been a while since I've done that. And so far the streak is still continuing. Like I didn't actually end up having to cut the session short, and it was because this boulder here came in so clutch. Like this is exactly the boulder that I needed. It's like not too intense on the grip, and it's a little bit here at the end, like these holds are kind of hard to grab, but it's a lot of actually weight is on your feet, and it's like really technical and like body position based and very cryptic. And so it's actually not that physically hard to do this boulder, but it just took a lot of time to figure out. And so I couldn't have designed like a better boulder that I needed for this training session other than this one. And this boulder is a 5-star. Like check out like the sequences and the moves that we're trying here, and it's just so pretty too. Like this boulder is amazing. I don't know who set this boulder, but maybe it was an Adam boulder. I was talking about Adam, how he's such a great setter and he's like super creative. And if he had any role in this boulder, it's very evident by this climb. This climb has got to be my favorite boulder that we've done since we've been back in Canada. This one is so good. It really spoke to me. This one really got me inspired, and I was having a lot of fun working it. So let's talk about the boulder. It's not like, so like I said, this boulder actually ended up not being that physically hard, but it just took me so long to figure out how to do the sequence really well. And so here, actually, good time to tune into this boulder. Check out what I'm trying here. So this is where I finally started to unlock the sequence. I started to realize that I couldn't do like a close compression move, like from this position. I couldn't just come into this hold because it was a bit too close, and like the close sort of compression like this is not a strong suit of mine. I'm not really great with the close compression on like slopey holds where you got to really squeeze and have that sort of pec strength. And like my fingers were just not primed enough to be able to grab these holds really hard, squeeze them together, and sort of unwind to the finish move. So I needed to find a more technical, a more bouncy way to do this move. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can like press under these holds or like really perch on this hold. And okay, so check out what I'm doing with my knee here. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but this is going to be today's tip of the day. It's a very sort of specific one. I wouldn't say that you're like finding yourself in this sort of position all the time. Basically, today's tip of the day is going to be, don't overlook the wall knee bars, or knee scums in this instance. So this often I find comes mostly into play on these sort of perch moves where I'm like really on my left leg here, like all the weight's sort of on my left leg. I'm really perched on this hold. I'm almost in a no hands position, but I probably I can't take my hands completely off, but it's like this volume is protruding. Even though this wall is overhanging, the volume is protruding quite a bit, and then you got a foot chip on top of that we can almost be in a no hands position. And the way that I'm really able to milk this position for all it's worth and like find an even super stable position is I'm actually taking my toe, I'm pushing my knee towards the wall, and my knee is touching the wall. So I'm actually getting a tiny bit of a knee bar. It's not such a good knee bar that I could take my hands off, like I was saying, but it's just enough to give me a little bit of extra support and stability to almost find a no hands position. And you'll see how we end up trying this ending sequence is like, I place my foot on the foothold, I really get my hips in nice and close to the wall, I perch really on this foothold, and then the last little trick to the sequence is to rest my knee against the wall, and that gets me locked in so that all I have to do is kind of just wrap the volume with my left hand just a little bit, and then I can come in to this hold as a side pull. And now this is the least physical way to grab this hold, is to like sort of really perch on this hold, lean into it as a side pull, and just inch my way up and up and up. And so now I'm going to give you a couple little time lapses of me dropping the finish of this boulder. Like what? I think I dropped it 4 times from the bottom, and every time was like so close. Like, okay, I guess these attempts don't look really close, but what's happening is like this finish hold is like, it's a jug, but it's really, if you hit it just a little bit wrong, you can't hold it. If you hit it right, you can take a one arm off it. But if just a little subtle like mistake means you're coming off. And so this position is like it feels really stable, but as soon as you start to move out of it, all of a sudden, especially because my hands are so tired, this right hand goes to absolute crap, and you're like, oh, I can't hold this. And so I kept getting having a fumble at the last second trying to jump for this finish move. But it was actually very similar to the last boulder we did on this exact wall here at Joe's, the black one with the volumes. I was thinking, okay, this is hard, but I can tell that I can do this boulder. And then slowly I keep falling at the finish move over and over again, just like the last boulder. And then I start getting worried, like, oh no, am I going to actually be able to send this boulder? And meanwhile, like when a boulder is like this nice and this quality and just really speaks to me this much, I'm going to be bothered if I don't get to send to this boulder and I don't get to like put my stamp on it, like claim this boulder as my own, because it's so good. And so it meant that I was willing to try this boulder over and over again and keep falling at the finish move until I got the send, which I finally did, even though it's not necessarily the most optimal for training. But sometimes, honestly, like a problem of mine is like I'm just addicted to sending quality boulders. And what I mean by that is like, even if it's not in the best interest of training, like obviously if you're dropping a finish move of a boulder in training a lot, chances are you've probably already got the value from that boulder in terms of training, and you're not actually gaining anything by repping out this boulder. Maybe sometimes like there's an argument for doing it, because I do it myself, but oftentimes it's just simply because that's where the climber in me comes out, right? I just want to do the boulder because it's like speaking to me and I'm inspired by it. So that black boulder was like, oh man, that was top tier. Best boulder we've done in Canada so far. Let's see what boulder is going to be the first to top it, because right now that's got the title. And then we just finished the session off with the other ping tape that was left. That was pretty moderate, and it was a lot of fun too. So we're back to CR for the workout. And thankfully, because the main boulder that we worked in our boulder session was the black one, that wasn't too taxing on the grip strength, like really at all, honestly. And even the part that was grip strength intensive at the end, I found a very technical way to do it and actually take a lot of the weight off my hands. So I really protected my grip strength during that session, which was really important. And that's going to be the theme of all our boulder sessions, honestly, is to protect the grip strength for the hangboard later in the day. Because we always go boulder in the morning and then hangboard in the evening on day 2. So I successfully protected my grip strength, and I was actually able to have a much better feeling hangboard than I thought I was going to, based on how tired my grip was in the morning. It wasn't the best feeling, so I decided to not do a weight jump, and I just stuck at 90 pounds, which I was doing last session. But actually, I felt this 90-pound session felt better than the previous 90-pound session. So I think I can do another weight jump for the next session. And then you'll notice we're not doing pinch block. Like I mentioned in the last workout, I still have that cut on my thumb. Maybe it's kind of hard to see, but it's like kind of right here. And I can't do pinch block when I have a split on my thumb. It's actually ridiculous. I can't tape it because the tape gets in the way. Basically, I got to wait a couple more days until it's healed. Until then, I can't do pinch block. But then as soon as it should be healed in a couple days, and we'll resume it. So anyway, for this workout, let's talk about the form that I try to go for all my exercises. This is like the next thing to cover that I haven't covered. So to start with crimp hangs, basically I just do a half crimp hang. It's very simple, no thumb involved, but also not open hand, just half crimp. I find that's my favorite position to train because I feel like it's the best of all the worlds, right? If you train half, you're also training your full crimp and you're also training your dragging power. So that's the reason why I train half crimp. And then with my one arms, I prefer to do one arm pull-ups opposed to chins. I used to train, and the difference between the two is the pull-ups that we're trying to keep our head in front of the bar, whereas if you do a chin, your head could go around and then you could end up on the other side. And I find when you're doing one arms on the rings, you often do a chin up because it's really hard to keep yourself, your head in front of the bar or in front of the rings when you're doing pull-ups. So I like to do one arm pull-ups. I feel like it's just more applicable to climbing. Yes, you do find yourself in this position a lot of times when you're canvassing, especially when you're climbing, but I feel like this is just more applicable. So that's why I prefer one arm pull-ups. And then jump squat is pretty simple. I just like to do my feet about a little wider than shoulder width apart, as we can see here. And then the idea is you lower into the squat like controlled. You don't want to be sort of like a mistake I was actually making with this exercise for a while is I would go down too fast. And then now all of a sudden I have the momentum, like the increase in momentum actually made it harder to jump out of the position because I let the weights fall too fast. And then it was harder to explode out. So when you're doing this exercise, you want to make sure you control your lower into, about halfway through a squat. And then that way, when you're jumping out of a squat, it's like almost jumping from a static position. And we're just trying to emphasize the upwards explosive jump. And then for dips, I don't know. Actually, I wouldn't say there's anything too specific that I focus on with my form. For dips, I just like to go to 90 degrees. Sometimes, it's dependent on your weight or the height of your dip bars, but for these dip bars, I just try to go as low until my weights hit the ground, and that's usually about 90 degrees. And then, nothing too crazy with the dip form. And I guess same for pistol squats, pretty standard. I like to do my pistol squats on like boxes, as you can see. And actually, the reason for that is this has happened to me a couple times where when I do it on the ground, like I have the mobility to do pistol squats on the ground, but the reason I had to stop was because a couple times the mobility that's required to lift your leg off the ground was actually straining my lower back, and I tweaked my lower back a few times by doing pistol squats on the ground. And I find that it's like kind of the same difficulty to do on the ground in a box, but I strained my back a couple times trying to keep my other leg off the ground. And so I don't want that anymore. So we're just doing it on the boxes. And then for deadlift, Maddie's stepdad, Eric, is the one who taught me how to deadlift about a year ago, and he always helps me with my form, and I find he has really good tips. So the way I try to deadlift is you start with the bar is sort of like on the where your shoelaces are, and then what you do is you rest your calves against the bar, and then you lock out your back in a nice neutral spine, nice flat back. And then the way he taught me to lift the deadlift was you basically want to try and drag the bar up against your shins, and then you want to focus on sitting back into the deadlift. That was actually the biggest sort of game changer that really helped the proper form like click in my mind, was to focus on the sit back. And that's the proper way to deadlift. And then you want to keep a narrow stance too. You want your feet shoulder width apart and your hands just like outside your legs. And then military press, Nothing too crazy about the form. I prefer the single dumbbells, like I mentioned, because if I use a bar, it's hard for me to notice imbalances. So that's why I like the single dumbbells, because both arms will be trained equally, whereas with the bar, you can kind of tip sometimes. But yeah, anyway, that's just sort of my logic behind all the sort of proper form that I try to use and why I do the exercises like that. But that being said, like I always try to caveat all my training advice with this isn't necessarily the exact right way to do things. This is just how I do them, because I don't know everything by any means, and this is just sort of all my opinion and how I go about my training and what works for me. So anyway, that wrapped up today's day of training. I am tired as usual. I mean, you're going to keep hearing me say this for the next few weeks until we have a rest week. The burning, the body hurting has not really stopped. It's weird. I'm getting used to the training volume, and my body is definitely, I'm starting to not like be scared of the sheer amount of training that's in front of my face right now, especially because after today, we're halfway done this training month. We've done 2 training weeks, and now we just have to do this same training week again 2 more times. And then we are at our first rest week. But yeah, my body's still hurting, but I'm no longer scared of the training volume, because it's like, you know, the analogy I like to use with the new training program and a new training routine is it's like driving a new route. When I like moved to the house that my family's in now from our old house, the new drive to the gym was like 7 minutes longer, and it felt like it was like 30 minutes longer the first few times you do it. But then after you start driving the route over and over again, you know, for like even just a couple months it takes, all of a sudden it feels like nothing, and it feels like it starts to go by a lot faster. And that's the same thing with a workout. A new workout is going to feel a whole lot harder the first few times you do it. And then as soon as you've just repped it out, like probably 3 times, all of a sudden your just brain knows what to expect, and it becomes a routine, and it's way easier to get it all done. And that's what I've been noticing with this program is now my body knows how to digest the workout a lot better. So it's nice. So yeah, training day's over. Tomorrow's rest day. And then the day after, I think, is double spiral day. So you can look forward to that. Hopefully we can make some progress on our projects. Insert catchy video here.